The rain stung Elias's face like 1,000 tiny accusations as he stood on the cracked sidewalk, his backpack slung over one shoulder. At 16, he had nowhere to go, no one to call, and no plan beyond surviving the night. His stepmother's words still burned in his ears. "You're not my son. Not like this." Elias shivered, not just from the cold, but from the weight of her rejection. The small town of Willow Creek, Ohio, felt like a cage closing in. The house he'd called home for a decade, a modest two-story, with peeling white paint, stood behind him, its front door now shut, locking him out of the only family he'd known since his father died. His stepmother, Claire, had been clear. His truth, his identity, was a sin she wouldn't tolerate. Being gay, in her eyes, was a choice he could unmake. But Elias knew better. He'd known since he was 12, when he'd first felt his heart race watching his best friend, Jamie, laugh under the summer sun. He wiped his eyes, unsure if it was rain or tears. The street was quiet, save for the hum of distant cars and the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog. Elias adjusted his backpack, stuffed with clothes, a worn journal, and the only photo he had of his dad, a faded Polaroid from a fishing trip when he was 8. His father had been his anchor, a quiet man who loved him fiercely. But cancer had taken him 5 years ago. Claire had stepped in, marrying his dad just before the diagnosis. And for a while, she'd been kind. But kindness, Elias learned, could turn brittle when faced with something she didn't understand. He started walking, his sneakers squishing against the wet pavement. Willow Creek wasn't big, but it felt vast when you were alone. The local diner, Rosie's, glowed in the distance, its neon sign flickering like a beacon. Elias had worked there last summer, washing dishes to save for a second-hand guitar. Maybe Rosie would let him crash in the storage room for a night. Maybe she'd understand. Inside, the diner smelled of coffee and fried onions, a comforting contrast to the storm outside. Rosie, a stout woman in her 50s with a smoker's rasp and a heart bigger than the county, spotted him immediately. "Elias, honey, you're soaked," she said, her brow furrowing as she took in his red-rimmed eyes. "What's going on?" He hesitated, the words catching in his throat. Coming out to Claire had been a disaster. What if Rosie reacted the same? But her gaze was steady, warm, like she already knew he was carrying something heavy. "Claire, she kicked me out," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because I'm gay." Rosie's face softened, but there was a fire in her eyes. "That woman," she muttered, shaking her head. "You're staying with me tonight. No question. We'll figure this out." She led him to a booth, sliding a mug of hot cocoa across the table. Elias clutched it, the warmth seeping into his hands, grounding him. For the first time in hours, he felt like he could breathe. That night, in Rosie's cramped apartment above the diner, Elias lay on a lumpy couch, staring at the ceiling. He thought of Jamie, his best friend, who'd moved to Chicago last year. Jamie had been the first person Elias told, the one who made him feel like being himself wasn't a crime. They'd stayed in touch through texts, but Elias hadn't told him about coming out to Claire. He didn't want pity. He wanted a plan. By morning, Rosie had won. "You're not staying in this town to rot," she said over pancakes. "You're smart, Elias. You've got dreams, music. Right. Go to Chicago. Jamie's there. And it's a big city. You can start over." She handed him a bus ticket she'd bought with her tips and $200 in cash. "This ain't much, but it's a start." Elias's throat tightened. "Rosie, I can't." "You can. And you will," she said firmly. "You're family now. And family doesn't let family give up." The bus ride to Chicago was 6 hours of staring out a smudged window, the Ohio fields blurring into Illinois skyline. Elias felt like he was shedding a skin, leaving behind the boy who'd been afraid to speak his truth. Chicago was loud, chaotic, alive. When he stepped off the bus, Jamie was there, his familiar grin cutting through the crowd. "You made it," Jamie said, pulling him into a hug. At 17, Jamie was taller now, his blonde hair longer, but his warmth was the same. "I didn't have a choice," Elias said, managing a small smile. Jamie didn't know the full story yet, but he didn't press. Instead, he led Elias to a tiny apartment he shared with his older brother, a place that smelled of cheap ramen and hope. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. That first year in Chicago was a blur of survival. Elias got a job at a coffee shop, enrolled in night school to finish his diploma, and started playing open mics with the guitar he'd finally bought. Music became his lifeline, a way to pour out the pain of Claire's rejection, the loss of his dad, the fear of being unmoored. Jamie was there through it all, his friendship a steady anchor. But there was something unspoken between them, a current Elias wasn't ready to name. One night, after a gig at a dive bar, Elias strummed a song he'd written about Willow Creek, about the boy who'd been cast out but kept running. The crowd was small, but their applause was loud, real. A man in a leather jacket approached him afterward, handing him a card. "You've got something special," he said. "I'm with a small label. Let's talk." Elias stared at the card, his heart pounding. This was a crack in the door to his dreams. But as he looked at Jamie, cheering from the bar, he wondered if he was ready to step through. The past still clung to him, heavy with Claire's words, his father's absence, and the fear that love, for him, might always come with a cost. Chicago's pulse became Elias's rhythm. The city was a beast of glass and steel, its streets humming with possibility and peril. At 18, he was no longer the scared kid from Willow Creek, but the scars of that night, Claire's cold dismissal. The rain-soaked sidewalk still lingered, surfacing in quiet moments when he doubted himself. The coffee shop job paid the bills. Barely. Elias shared a cramped apartment with Jamie and his brother, Mark, a gruff but kind mechanic who didn't care who Elias loved as long as he paid his share of the rent. Night school was grueling, but Elias powered through, driven by a promise he'd made to his dad: finish what you start. His real escape, though, was music. Every weekend, he hauled his guitar to open mics across the city, from smoky bars in Wicker Park to quirky cafes in Logan Square. His songs raw, aching ballads about loss and defiance drew crowds, small but loyal. Jamie was his biggest fan. He'd sit in the front row, his blue eyes bright with pride, clapping louder than anyone. Their friendship had deepened in Chicago, but there were moments, a brush of hands, a lingering glance that hinted at something more. Elias felt it, a pull he couldn't ignore, but fear held him back. What if love ruined the one constant he had left? The man from the dive bar, Vince, became a turning point. He was a producer with a small indie label, scrappy but legit. Over coffee in a diner not unlike Rosie's, Vince laid out a plan, a demo, a few gigs, maybe a shot at a real album. "Your voice," he said, leaning forward. "It's got pain, but it's got hope. People need that." Elias signed a contract that night, his hands shaking. It wasn't a ticket to fame, but it was a chance. Recording the demo was exhilarating and terrifying. Elias poured his soul into 4 tracks, each one a piece of his story. The first, "Rain on Willow," was about that night Claire kicked him out. Singing it felt like bleeding. But when Vince played it back, Elias heard something new: strength. He wasn't just surviving. He was building something. Jamie was there for every late-night session, bringing takeout and bad jokes to keep Elias grounded. One night, as they walked home under Chicago's glittering skyline, Jamie stopped. "You're gonna make it, Eli," he said, his voice soft but certain. "I always knew you would." Elias wanted to say something. "I am scared. I need you. I think I love you," but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he squeezed Jamie's shoulder. A silent promise. Life wasn't all music and hope. Chicago was expensive, and Elias's paycheck barely covered rent and groceries. He and Jamie fought sometimes. Small spats over dishes or late nights. But they always made up. One evening, after a particularly rough shift, Elias came home to find Jamie strumming his guitar, attempting a clumsy version of Rain on Willow. "You're terrible." Elias laughed, but his chest ached with something warm. "Let me try again," Jamie said, grinning. He played a few chords, then set the guitar down. "You know, I'm proud of you. But you don't have to do this alone." His eyes held Elias's, searching. For a moment, the air felt charged, like the city itself was holding its breath. Elias leaned in, heart pounding, but a car horn blared outside, shattering the moment. They laughed it off, but the unspoken lingered. The demo caught traction. A local radio station played Rain on Willow, and suddenly, Elias was getting calls for bigger gigs. Vince booked him at a mid-sized venue, opening for a folk band with a cult following. The night of the show, Elias stood backstage, guitar in hand, nerves twisting his stomach. Jamie was in the crowd, his grin a beacon. When Elias stepped into the spotlight, the room hushed. He sang about Willow Creek, about a boy who refused to break, and the crowd roared. After the show, a woman approached him, Lila, a booking agent with connections in Nashville. "You've got something real," she said, handing him her card. "Come to Tennessee. We'll get you in front of the right people." Elias nodded, stunned, but his eyes found Jamie's across the room. Moving to Nashville meant leaving Chicago, leaving Jamie. The thought twisted like a knife. That night, they sat on the apartment's fire escape, sharing a cheap beer. "You have to go?" Jamie said, his voice steady but his eyes betraying a flicker of pain. "This is your shot." Elias wanted to argue, to say he'd stay, but Jamie's hand on his arm stopped him. "I'll visit. You're not getting rid of me that easy." Elias left for Nashville a month later, his guitar and a duffel bag his only companions. The city was a different beast warmer. Slower, but just as hungry. Lila got him gigs at honky-tonks and small festivals, and his music started to spread. He missed Jamie fiercely, their texts and calls a lifeline across the miles. But Nashville was where Elias began to understand himself not just as a survivor, but as someone who could create something beautiful from pain. Nashville was a city of dreamers, and Elias fit right in, though he felt like an imposter at first. At 19, he was younger than most of the musicians grinding it out in dive bars and open mics. But his voice gravelly, raw, and honest set him apart. Lila, his booking agent, was relentless, landing him gigs at venues like the Bluebird Cafe, where songwriters were made or broken. Every performance chipped away at his self-doubt, replacing it with a quiet confidence. His days were a whirlwind of writing, playing, and hustling. He lived in a rundown apartment with two other musicians, a guitarist named Sam and a drummer named Tara, both in their 20s and chasing the same dream. They became his makeshift family, swapping stories over late-night pizza and jamming in their cramped living room. But Elias's songs always carried a weight the others couldn't match. His lyrics were a map of his scars, from Willow Creek to Chicago to now. Jamie visited when he could, taking the overnight bus from Chicago. Those weekends were Elias's lifeline. They'd explore Nashville's neon-lit streets, eat hot chicken that burned their mouths, and talk until dawn. Each visit felt like a countdown, though, because Jamie always had to leave. During one visit, as they sat on a park bench overlooking the Cumberland River, Jamie took Elias's hand. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice catching. "But I miss you." Elias's heart raced. He wanted to say I love you, but the words felt too big, too risky. Instead, he squeezed Jamie's hand, letting the moment linger. When Jamie left the next day, Elias wrote a song called Miles Between, about loving someone you couldn't hold on to. It became his most requested track, though he never told Jamie it was about him. His career gained momentum. A local label signed him for a full album, and Rain on Willow hit regional charts. Blogs started calling him the next big thing in Americana, a label Elias found surreal. He was just a kid who'd been kicked out of his home, singing to survive. But the attention brought pressure. Lila pushed him to tour, to capitalize on the buzz. "You're not just telling your story," she said. "You're telling theirs." She meant the kids like him, queer, rejected, searching for a place to belong. Touring was grueling. Elias crisscrossed the South in a beat-up van, playing to crowds of 10 one night and 100 the next. He sent half his earnings to Rosie, who'd saved him back in Willow Creek, and kept in touch with Jamie through late-night calls. But the road was lonely, and doubt crept in. Was he good enough? Would this all collapse? And why couldn't he tell Jamie how he felt? One night in Memphis, after a show, a fan, a boy no older than 16, approached him. "Your music," the kid said, his voice shaking. "It's like you're singing my life. My parents, they don't get it." Elias listened as the boy poured out his story, so much like his own. He hugged him, gave him a signed CD, and said, "You're enough. Don't let them tell you otherwise." Driving back to Nashville, Elias realized his music wasn't just for him anymore. Back in Nashville, he got a call from Vince, his old producer from Chicago. "There's a showcase in New York," Vince said. "Big labels will be there. This could be your break." Elias agreed, but the stakes felt higher now. New York was a world away from Willow Creek, from the boy who'd been cast out. He invited Jamie to come, needing his anchor. The showcase was at a sleek Manhattan venue, packed with industry types and fans. Elias took the stage, his guitar a familiar weight. He sang Miles Between, his voice cracking with emotion, and the crowd was silent, then erupted. Afterward, a rep from a major label approached him with a deal that made his head spin: national distribution. A proper tour. Real money. But as he signed the contract, his thoughts were on Jamie, waiting backstage. They celebrated at a diner, just like old times. Jamie raised a milkshake, grinning, to Elias, the star. But his eyes were sad, and Elias finally understood why. "I'm not going anywhere without you," Elias said, his voice low. Jamie looked at him, startled, then smiled. "Good," he said, "because I'm not letting you." That night, in a cheap hotel room, Elias kissed Jamie. It was tentative at first, then fierce, like they'd both been waiting years to breathe. "I love you," Elias whispered, the words finally free. Jamie's answer was a kiss that said everything. The next morning, Elias woke with a clarity he hadn't felt since he was 16. He was building a life, not just a career, but a home. With Jamie. With music. With purpose. But back in Willow Creek, someone else was watching his rise. Claire, his stepmother, had seen his face in a local paper. A story about the hometown kid making it big. Her hands trembled as she read, the past rushing back like a flood. Back in Willow Creek, Claire's life had unraveled in the years since she'd cast Elias out. At 45, she lived alone in the same house, its paint now chipped beyond repair. Her marriage to Elias's father had been her anchor. But after his death, she'd clung to control over the house, over Elias, over her small, orderly world. Kicking him out had felt righteous at the time, a way to protect her values, her faith. But the silence that followed was deafening. The town hadn't changed much. Rosie's diner still glowed at night, though Rosie herself had retired, passing the place to her niece. Claire avoided it, knowing the whispers that followed her, the woman who threw out her stepson. She told herself she'd done the right thing, that Elias's choice was a sin she couldn't condone. But doubt crept in, especially on sleepless nights when she remembered his face, those hazel eyes, so like his father's, pleading for understanding. One evening, flipping through channels, Claire froze. Elias's face filled the screen. Older now, 22, but unmistakable. He was performing on a late-night show, his guitar slung low, his voice raw and haunting. The host called him a rising star with a story that'll break your heart. Claire's breath caught as the camera panned to the crowd, where a young man, blonde, smiling, cheered louder than anyone. Was that Jamie, the boy Elias had been so close to? She turned up the volume, her hands shaking. Elias spoke about his music, about Rain on Willow, about being kicked out at 16 for being gay. The audience gasped, then applauded as he said, "I turned that pain into something beautiful. I hope it helps someone else." Claire's chest tightened. She'd never heard the song, never knew what he'd gone through after that night. She changed the channel, but his face lingered. The next day, she found the article in the local paper, a proud headline about Willow Creek's own Making It Big. It mentioned his tour, his album, his openness about his identity. Claire read it 3 times, each word a needle. She hadn't meant to hurt him. Not really. She'd thought she was saving him, fixing him. But the boy on TV wasn't broken, was thriving. She drove to Rosie's diner, needing answers. Rosie's niece, Mia, was behind the counter, her expression cool when she saw Claire. "Haven't seen you in years," Mia said, wiping her hands. "What do you want?" "Is it true?" Claire asked, her voice low. "About Elias. He's famous now." Mia raised an eyebrow. "You didn't know? He's been on the radio, TV, everywhere. Kid's got a gift." She paused, her gaze sharp. "You'd know that if you hadn't thrown him out." Claire flinched, the words cutting deeper than she'd expected. I thought I was doing the right thing." Mia snorted. "Right for who?" "Not him." She slid a flyer across the counter, an ad for Elias's upcoming show in Cincinnati, the closest he'd come to Willow Creek. "Go see him. Maybe you'll get it." Claire didn't sleep that night. She kept seeing Elias's face, hearing his voice. She'd justified her actions with scripture, with fear. But now she wondered what she'd lost. Her husband's son, the last piece of him, was out there, building a life without her. She bought a ticket to the Cincinnati show, her hands trembling as she clicked purchase. The venue was packed, a sea of faces young and old, drawn to Elias's music. Claire stood in the back, her heart pounding as he took the stage. He was taller now, his frame lean but strong, his eyes brighter than she remembered. He sang about love, loss, and resilience, each note a story she hadn't been part of. When he performed Rain on Willow, the crowd swayed, some crying, and Claire felt her knees weaken. The lyrics painted that night: the rain, the rejection, the boy who kept going. It was her shame laid bare. After the show, she lingered, unsure why. She wanted to see him, to say something, anything. But when she saw him emerge, arm around the blonde boy Jamie, She was sure she froze. They were laughing, their hands intertwined, their love unmistakable. Claire's throat closed. She'd been so wrong. She drove home in silence, the weight of her choices crushing her. The next day, she found his album online and listened, start to finish. Each song was a window into the boy she'd failed. She wrote a letter, her first in years, pouring out her regret, her apologies, her hope that he might forgive her. She didn't send it. Not yet. Elias, meanwhile, was soaring. The New York deal had launched him into a national tour, his music resonating with thousands. He and Jamie were navigating their new relationship, long distance but fierce. Jamie had moved to Nashville to be closer, taking a job at a record store while studying graphic design. They were building something real, something Elias hadn't dared dream of at 16. But Claire's shadow lingered. Elias didn't know she'd seen him, didn't know she was grappling with her guilt. He was focused on the future new songs, new cities, a life where he could be himself. Yet a part of him still carried Willow Creek, still wondered if the woman who'd raised him could ever understand. Elias's tour took him across the country, from dive bars to amphitheaters, his music a bridge between his past and his future. At 23, he was no longer just a kid with a guitar. He was a voice for those who'd been silenced, a beacon for kids like the one he'd been. His album, Rain on Willow, climbed the charts, and his face appeared on billboards, in magazines, on TV screens. But success didn't erase the ache of his past, it only sharpened it. Jamie was his constant. They'd settled into a rhythm in Nashville, sharing a small apartment filled with secondhand furniture and dreams. Jamie designed Elias's album art, his bold lines and vivid colors capturing the raw emotion of the music. Their love was steady but not without challenges. Touring kept Elias away for weeks, and Jamie's own ambitions sometimes clashed with the chaos of Elias's rising fame. Still, they fought for each other, their bond a quiet rebellion against a world that hadn't always been kind. One night in Austin, after a sold-out show, Elias got a call from Lila. "There's a documentary crew interested in you," she said. "They want to tell your story, Willow Creek. The whole thing. It could be huge." Elias hesitated. His past was raw, private, but he knew his story wasn't just his anymore. Kids wrote to him, sharing their own tales of rejection, and he felt a responsibility to speak for them. The documentary, Out of the Rain, began filming in Nashville. The crew followed Elias to gigs, to the studio, to quiet moments with Jamie. They wanted to visit Willow Creek, to see where it all started. Elias resisted at first. Going back meant facing Claire, or at least the ghost of her. But Jamie convinced him. "You're not that scared kid anymore," he said, squeezing his hand. "Show them who you are." Willow Creek felt smaller than Elias remembered. The crew filmed him walking the familiar streets, past Rosie's diner, past the house where Claire still lived. He didn't knock on her door, but standing there, he felt a strange mix of anger and pity. The documentary captured it all as music, his pain, his triumph. When it aired, it was a sensation, drawing praise for its honesty and Elias's raw charisma. Claire watched it at home, alone. The screen showed Elias at 16, a reenactment of that rainy night. Then cut to him now, confident, loved, successful. The narrator spoke of his stepmother's rejection, and Claire's name, though not explicitly mentioned, hung heavy in the air. She wept, not just for what she'd done, but for what she'd missed. Elias wasn't just surviving. He was changing lives. She found the letter she'd written, now crumpled and tear-stained, and added to it, "I was wrong, Elias. I was scared, and I failed you. I see you now, and I'm so sorry." She mailed it this time, to his label's address, not expecting a reply but needing to try. Elias received the letter on the road, in a stack of fan mail. He recognized Claire's handwriting instantly, and his hands shook as he opened it. Her words were a flood regret, shame, a plea for forgiveness. He didn't know how to feel. Part of him wanted to crumple it, to let her live with her guilt. But another part, the part that had written "Rain on Willow," knew healing wasn't just for him. He called Rosie, who'd kept tabs on Willow Creek. "She's been a mess," Rosie said. "Comes into the diner sometimes. Just sits there, staring. I think she's trying to make sense of it." Elias thanked her, his mind racing. He didn't know Claire anything, but he owed himself closure. He and Jamie talked it over for hours. "What do you want?" Jamie asked, his voice steady. Elias didn't know. Forgiveness felt too big, too soon. But ignoring her felt like letting her win. He decided to write back. Not to forgive, but to acknowledge. "Claire, I got your letter. I'm glad you're reflecting. But what happened shaped me. I'm okay now. But it's not because of you. It's because of the people who chose to love me." He mailed it, feeling lighter but not whole. The tour continued, each show a testament to his resilience. Fans sang along to Miles Between, not knowing it was about Jamie, who was now at every show he could manage. Their love was a quiet anchor, grounding Elias amidst the chaos of fame. Claire, back in Willow Creek, read his reply and wept again. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a door cracked open. She started attending a support group for parents of queer kids, listening to stories that echoed Elias's. She didn't speak much, but she listened, learning to unravel the beliefs that had cost her so much. Elias's star kept rising. The documentary won awards, and his next album was already in the works. But the letter from Claire lingered, a reminder that the past wasn't go night was part of him. Always would be. He wrote a new song, Cracked Doors, about forgiveness as a choice, not an obligation. It wasn't for Claire. Not Eli, it was for him. Elias's life at 24 was a paradox of chaos and clarity. The tour had made him a name, his music a lifeline for thousands. But the grind was relentless. He'd play to screaming crowds one night, then collapse in a hotel room, haunted by memories of Willow Creek. Jamie was his rock, but even their love felt the strain of constant travel and the weight of Elias's past. The documentary's success brought new opportunities: a book deal, talk show invites, even a potential movie adaptation. Elias was hesitant about the spotlight, but Lila pushed him. "Your story's bigger than you," she said. "It's a movement." He agreed to a memoir, Rain to Rise, co-written with a journalist who'd grown up queer in the South. Writing it was like peeling back his skin, but it was also freeing, a way to own his narrative. Jamie, now working as a freelance designer, traveled with Elias when he could. Their apartment in Nashville was a haven, filled with plants Jamie tended and posters from Elias's shows. They fought sometimes over missed calls, over Elias's tendency to bottle up his fears, but they always found their way back. One night, after a quiet dinner, Jamie proposed. It was simple, no grand gesture, just a ring on the table and a nervous smile. "I want this forever," he said. Elias said yes, tears in his eyes. And for the first time, he felt like the future could be his. The memoir's release was a whirlwind. Elias did a book tour alongside his music gigs, reading excerpts to packed rooms. Fans shared their own stories, and Elias listened, struck by how his pain had become their strength. At a signing in Chicago, a girl no older than 15 handed him a letter. "My mom threw me out too," she wrote. "Your music saved me." Elias hugged her, his throat tight, and promised to keep singing for her. Back in Willow Creek, Claire was changing. Slowly. The support group had opened her eyes, forcing her to confront her ignorance. She'd grown up in a world where being gay was a sin. No questions asked. But now she saw the harm she'd caused. She listened to Elias's music obsessively, each song a lesson in her failure. She'd framed his letter, a reminder of the boy she'd lost and the man he'd become. She started volunteering at a local youth center, helping kids who'd been rejected by their families. It was her way of making amends, though she knew it couldn't erase the past. One day, she saw a poster for Elias's show in Cleveland, just an hour away. She bought a ticket, her heart in her throat. This time, she wouldn't hide in the back. The Cleveland show was electric, Elias's voice carrying the weight of his journey. Jamie was backstage, as always, his presence a quiet strength. Claire stood near the front, her hands clasped tightly. When Elias sang "Cracked Doors," she felt every word, the lyrics a mirror to her regret. After the show, she waited by the stage door, clutching a copy of his memoir. When Elias emerged, he froze. Claire looked older, smaller, her eyes red with unshed tears. "Elias," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." He stared at her, the boy he'd been warring with the man he was. He didn't hug her, didn't forgive her, but he took the book she held out. "I read it," she said. "I see you now." He nodded, his jaw tight. "I'm glad you're trying," he said finally. But this, he gestured to himself, to Jamie, to the life he'd built. "This is mine." Claire nodded, tears falling, and stepped back. It wasn't closure, not fully, but it was a step. Elias walked away, Jamie's hand in his, feeling the weight of that moment. He didn't need Claire's approval anymore, but her acknowledgement mattered, if only a little. The tour continued, each show a testament to his resilience. He and Jamie planned their wedding, a small ceremony in Nashville with Rosie, Mark, and their musician friends. It was a promise of a future unburdened by the past. Claire returned to Willow Creek, quieter but resolute. She kept volunteering, kept learning, kept listening to Elias's music. She didn't expect forgiveness, but she hoped for redemption, one small act at a time. Elias's songs played in her house now, a reminder that love could heal, even if it took years. Elias, meanwhile, was writing again. His next album would be about love, not just romantic, but the kind that carried you through darkness. He dedicated it to Jamie, to Rosie, to the fans who saw themselves in his story, and, in a quiet corner of his heart, to the boy he'd been, who'd walked away from Willow Creek and kept going. Elias's wedding was a quiet affair, held in a Nashville backyard under string lights and a late summer sky. At 24, he stood beside Jamie, both in simple suits, their hands clasped as Rosie officiated. She'd gotten ordained just for them, her voice thick with pride as she pronounced them partners for life. The small crowd, Mark, Lila, Sam, Tara, and a handful of fans who'd become friends, cheered, their joy a balm to Elias's scars. The night ended with music, Elias strumming a new song he'd written for Jamie, "Always Home," about finding a place to belong. The wedding marked a shift. Elias's second album, "Cracked Doors," was nearing completion, its songs a tapestry of love, forgiveness, and resilience. The documentary and memoir had made him a voice for the marginalized, and he leaned into that role, speaking at pride events and youth shelters. His music wasn't just art, no, it was advocacy. Fans sent letters, some from parents who'd changed their minds after hearing his story, others from kids who'd found courage in his songs. Claire, in Willow Creek, followed his journey from afar. She'd seen the wedding announcement online, a photo of Elias and Jamie smiling, their love radiant. It stung. Not because she disapproved, but because she'd missed it. She'd missed everything. Her work at the youth center was her penance, but it was also her purpose. She helped kids like Elias, listening to their stories, offering the support she'd failed to give him. She didn't contact him again. She didn't feel she had the right, but she kept his letter, rereading it when doubt crept in. Elias's tour for Cracked Doors was his biggest yet, spanning coasts and crossing into Canada. Jamie joined him for parts, their new rings glinting under stage lights. The shows were electric, but the grind was real long hours. Sleepless nights. The constant pressure to perform. Elias struggled with anxiety. The weight of his past and his platform sometimes overwhelming. Jamie noticed, pulling him aside after a show in Seattle. "You don't have to carry it all," he said. "Let me help." Elias nodded, leaning into him, grateful for a love that didn't falter. One night in Los Angeles, a surprise came. Rosie flew in, her first time seeing Elias headline a major venue. She sat in the front row, her raspy laugh cutting through the crowd. After the show, she hugged him tightly. "Your dad would be so damn proud," she said, tears in her eyes. Elias cried too, the words unlocking something deep. He dedicated the next show to her, the woman who'd given him a chance when no one else had. The tour's final stop was Cincinnati, close enough to Willow Creek to stir old ghosts. Elias hadn't planned to go back, but Lila had other ideas. "There's a youth center there," she said. "They want you to speak. It's where your stepmom volunteers." Elias froze. He hadn't seen Claire since Cleveland. Hadn't wanted to. But the kids at the center, they were the reason he kept going. He agreed, his stomach churning. The youth center was a modest building, its walls covered in art from the kids who found refuge there. Elias spoke to a group of teens, sharing his story. Willow Creek, the rain, the music that saved him. They listened, some crying, some nodding. Afterward, a girl asked, "How do you forgive someone who hurt you?" Elias paused, thinking of Claire. "You don't always have to," he said. "But sometimes, letting go is for you, not them." Claire was there, in the back, helping with snacks. She didn't approach, but Elias saw her, their eyes meeting briefly. She looked different, softer, tired, but trying. He didn't speak to her, but he felt the air shift, like a wound starting to close. Jamie squeezed his hand, grounding him. After the talk, Elias played an acoustic set for the kids, including Cracked Doors. The lyrics about choosing your own path, about doors that open and close, felt truer than ever. Claire listened, tears streaming down her face. When it was over, she slipped away, leaving a note on his guitar case. "Thank you for this. I'm still learning. Claire." Elias read it later, in the quiet of their hotel room. He didn't cry, didn't rage. He just folded it, tucking it into his journal. "You okay?" Jamie asked, his voice soft. Elias nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." The tour ended, and Elias and Jamie returned to Nashville, exhausted but whole. The album dropped, and reviews called it a masterpiece of healing. Elias felt it too, not finished, not perfect, but whole. He was no longer the boy on the sidewalk, but he carried that boy with him, his pain now a source of strength. Claire kept working at the center, her life quieter but fuller. She didn't expect to see Elias again, but she hoped he knew she was trying. His music played in her car, a reminder of the boy she'd lost and the man he'd become. Elias's life at 25 was a tapestry of hard-won victories. Cracked Doors topped charts, its songs resonating with anyone who'd ever felt cast out. He and Jamie settled into their Nashville life, their apartment now a home with a garden Jamie tended and a studio where Elias wrote. Fame brought challenges, paparazzi, Endless emails. The pressure to stay relevant, but it also brought purpose. Elias used his platform to advocate for queer youth, partnering with organizations to fund shelters and scholarships. His story, once a wound, was now a beacon. The past still lingered, though. Claire's note from the youth center sat in his journal, its words a quiet echo. He hadn't responded, hadn't needed to. Letting go wasn't forgiveness, it was freedom. He focused on the present, Jamie, their dog, a scruffy mutt named Willow, and the music that kept him grounded. One spring morning, Elias got a call from Rosie. "There's a festival in Willow Creek," she said. "They want you to headline. Come home, kid." Elias hesitated. Willow Creek was a place of pain, but also of beginnings. Jamie saw his doubt and said, "Let's do it. Show them who you are." Elias agreed, his heart pounding. The festival was small but vibrant, held in a field outside town. Elias arrived early, walking the streets with Jamie, passing Rosie's diner, now bustling under Mia's care. He saw familiar faces, old classmates, neighbors who greeted him with awe, some with shame. The boy they'd known was gone, replaced by a man who'd built a life from ashes. Claire was there, helping at a food stall. She'd aged, her hair streaked with gray, but her eyes held a quiet resolve. She'd become a fixture at the youth center, advocating for kids like Elias, her faith evolving into something kinder. She didn't expect to speak to him, but she hoped he'd see her there, trying. Elias took the stage at dusk, the crowd a mix of locals and fans who'd driven hours to see him. He opened with "Rain on Willow," its chords a bridge to his past. The lyrics about that rainy night, about survival, hit harder here, in the town that had cast him out. The crowd sang along, some crying, some cheering. Claire stood near the back, her hands clasped, tears falling. She saw Jamie in the front row, his smile radiant, and understood what she'd missed. Mid-set, Elias paused. "This town," he said, his voice steady. "It broke me once, but it also made me. I'm here because of people like Rosie, like my husband, Jamie, who believed in me when I didn't." The crowd roared, and Elias's eyes found Claire's for a moment. He didn't name her, didn't need to. The song that followed, "Cracked Doors," was his answer, a testament to choosing your own path. After the show, Claire approached, tentative. "Elias," she said, her voice trembling, "I'm so proud of you." He looked at her, seeing not the woman who'd hurt him, but one who was trying to make amends. "Thank you," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I hope you keep helping those kids." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and stepped back. Elias and Jamie stayed in Willow Creek for a day, visiting Rosie, reminiscing. They drove past the old house, now empty, and Elias felt no anger, only peace. He'd built a life bigger than that night, bigger than the pain. Back in Nashville, he wrote a new song, "Home Again," about returning not to a place, but to yourself. Claire kept her work at the youth center, her life a quiet redemption. She carried Elias's music with her, a reminder of what she'd lost and what she'd gained, a chance to do better. She never contacted him again, but she followed his journey, smiling at every new song, every milestone. Elias's career soared, but his heart stayed grounded. He and Jamie adopted another dog, planned a tour in Europe, and kept building their life. His music evolved, weaving stories of love, loss, and hope. At every show, he looked out at the crowd, kids like him, parents learning to listen, families finding their way, and knew he'd made a difference. The final scene was a quiet one, Elias and Jamie on their porch, watching the sunset, Willow barking at a squirrel. Elias strummed his guitar, humming a melody that hadn't yet found words. The past was there. Always. But it no longer defined him. He was home not in Willow Creek. Not in Nashville. But in the life he'd built. The love he'd chosen. The truth he'd fought for. And that was enough.